Hi, I'm Bob Roth, managing partner and co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. Since 1994, we've been helping older adults in the Phoenix community age gracefully and safely in the place they call home. Since 2014, I've been bringing you Health Futures, Taking Stock in You, a show dedicated to helping you live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to Health Futures, and today's conversation is a little different, but it's an important one. We're talking about the future of healthcare here in Arizona, not just from a provider perspective like me, but we're talking about policy, we're going to be talking about leadership, and we're really going to get some perspective on both. So I'm happy to have here in the studio with me, my guest is Congressman David Schweikert, who is represented Arizona in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2011.
Yeah, can you believe it's? My wife keeps pointing out, you just started your 16th year.
It's crazy.
I had no idea.
And now is running for governor of our great state. Congressman Schweikert has built a reputation as someone deeply focused on fiscal policy, healthcare spending, and long-term economic sustainability. Issues that directly impact the future of healthcare delivery. So today, we're going to explore his journey into public service and how he's stepping away from Congress to run for governor. And most importantly, we're going to hear what his vision is for healthcare in Arizona. So Congressman Schweikert,
thank you.
Welcome to Health
Thank
Futures.
You for having me, because maybe this is a bit odd as a Republican. Healthcare is my passion. Look, it's hard for folks to get their head around, but I oversee, I'm number 4 in Ways and Means. So I have the oversight over Medicare. I also chair the Joint Economic Committee. So we're the ones who've done all the economic analysis on Medicare Part C, most Medicare Advantage. We just wrote a paper on Medicare Part B, trying to help folks understand the scale of what's going on in our country. In 6 to 6.5 years, the Medicare Part A trust fund is empty. It's gone.
That is scary.
And it's a 12% automatic cut to those recipients of Medicare Part A funds, hospitals, other special providers. The scale of what's going on and its demographics. We have doubled the number of 65-year-olds as we had 20 years ago. Yet our number of young people is flat. So you and I now live in a country that's basically at zero population growth.
Yeah.
Now help me figure out how to deal in a world where Medicare itself last year cost $1 trillion. 6 years from now, 7 years from now, it's at $2 trillion. That spending increase is almost solely driven by demographics and healthcare inflation. So what are the innovations you and I can actually develop, turn into policy for Medicare, Medicaid, VA, Indian Health Services, the other providers in our society to stabilize the price and in many ways help our brothers and sisters be healthier and therefore use dramatically less healthcare. And I hope that's what we can talk about.
Well, I hope so too. And I mean, I love how we're just going to jump right into the solutions, but you did do a great job of stating the problem. And when you and I had lunch together a couple weeks ago, I shared those basic math. Yeah. And I know math is something that you're really good at. But I mean, when you sit down and you think about it, our 65-year-old population, which you and I are getting close to encroaching on, it's going to double in 2 decades. So it's already doubled once. It's going to double again. Mm-hmm. And the 85-year-old population which is the one that is going to put a lot of stressors on us.
You just hit.
It's going to nearly quadruple.
Yeah, you're brilliant. You just hit, because as you start to get 65 to 75, actually utilization of the healthcare system is actually fairly moderate.
And we're aging differently than our last generation.
Very much so. And there actually becomes part of the discussion of what if I could give you a series of technologies, approaches that I would argue are moral because it helps our brothers and sisters stay healthier, but also helps stabilize some of the spend. But I'll throw one out at you, just a thought experiment. 31% of Medicare spending is associated with diabetes.
31%.
33% of all healthcare. But and for Medicaid systems, so the healthcare systems for those that are low income or poor, it's actually dramatically even higher than that. But 31% of our brothers and sisters 65 and up it's
Are
diabetes.
diabetics.
Well, we've been actually building a model. What would happen if we can help some of those populations get their weight down? Exercise, gamify, provide optionality of saying, hey, walk, eat this food, those things. We actually think we can save billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in the healthcare system and have the population actually live better, healthier, and use substantially less healthcare services.
We're already starting to do some of that here. Dr.
Exactly.
Jim
Yes.
Redfield was
Yes.
here from Honor Health. So was Dr. or should I say Todd Laporte, the CEO of Honor Health.
Well, they have their Blue Zone
Blue
project.
Zone, exactly.
But I will tell you, I've been part of it since part of some of the beginning, working on, and we offer them some of the numbers from my economists. The hard part is in a community like we live, and we're blessed to live here. I mean, we're right now sitting where your studios. This is my neighborhood. I grew up here.
Isn't that great?
My father's office was on top of the Wigwam, the office building across from the Sugar Bowl.
No
so
way.
This was home.
So for our listeners, we're right here in the heart of Old Scottsdale.
Yep.
Right by where the horse statue is and the fountain.
So let's walk right now for the general population. What if one of the most powerful things you and I could do for the Blue Zone project, longevity in a healthy state?
Mm-hmm.
First is weight. We calculate obesity is 47% of U.S. healthcare spending in some fashion with the multi-chronic conditions.
And you know what's interesting? The data that I've seen, too, is that about 46% of our population is obese.
Oh, and in some states, it's more than half.
And to think, you and I are from the same generation. In the 1960s, obesity was about 4 or 5% of the population.
Okay.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, I don't know that data point. I'm very familiar with the current data points. In our Medicaid systems, look, we use something called Access here in Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. And many, many years ago, I used to do the budgets for Access. So I have some relationship with how the system was designed.
We're going to hold tab down on Access.
Yeah.
I want to get back to talking about that too.
We'll cut.
Yeah.
But it turns out some of these things that are great policy for seniors actually are just great policy for healthcare all up and down. So let's say I came to you because you're an expert at this. You're going to know a lot more than I do. I'm just some guy it's looking at the budgets and trying to design policy. If we're in the moment where the thing you can blow into, a breath biopsy, if we can make it legal, right now they're almost illegal for insane reasons, but the accuracy of them now is statistically remarkable. Blowing it, knows you have a bacterial infection, a viral infection, knows category, knows what pharmaceuticals you're not allergic to, can order them, Lyft can drop them off at your house in a couple hours. How does something like that technology, which you might be able to have on your shelf for $200-300, make aging in place a radically much more convenient option? Because you functionally have your own medical lab. You know, whether you're wearing an Apple Watch, I'm wearing an Oura Ring, the Dexcom I've been experimenting with, which is blood glucose monitor, to the thing that you lick on, you urinate on, this and that. The fact of the matter is the data sets we could all have, the ability to make Americans, allow them to be autonomous in their healthcare. They control their own medical lab in their life. If it's on this side of this, it's on this side of the encryption chip. It's absolutely private. It's absolutely, you keep your finances on this.
Right.
So we've been working on this vision for Arizona, as you run for governor. How do you legalize what they call sandboxes, experimental projects, so the trial lawyers don't come beat the crap out of you? That would say you're going to offer a program to help seniors age in place. And one of the things you're going to do with it is technology.
Fascinating. What a great time it is to be alive right now. I mean, to thank the break. Seriously, I mean, we are all drinking from a fire hose. And the fact that we can have this kind of data at our fingertips. And we haven't even started talking about like GLP-1s and those types of therapies that could really help as well.
Let's make sure we touch on that because we just finished a math experiment for our Medicaid system. And on the third year of availability, the savings numbers were just wonderful.
On GLP-1s?
Yep.
Wow.
Because the majority of our population we calculate on our Medicaid system is obese.
And diabetic.
Oh, huge diabetic. So is it moral saying, look, we all have different genomes. Our brothers and sisters here on Salt River P. Maricopa Indian community have, I think, the second highest diabetic rate in almost the world. It's not their fault.
Right.
They genetically haven't lacked certain enzymes to break sugars down. So stop thinking of this as a sort of a social science problem and start thinking of it as a science problem of how we help our brothers and sisters live better and be healthier. No stigma to this. And now that access to glutides has fallen for the tablet down to $149 a month?
It's crazy. You can buy big screen TVs for $400.
Yeah, but the ability to start to think about this. Now, it's got to be more. There's got to be nutrition. We've actually been playing with an experiment. Okay, let's ramble a bit. In the last 20 years, 25 years, what is the only statistically valid example of helping young people get healthier? Wasn't it Michelle Obama's Get Out? And we spent billions and billions and billions of dollars on that. It was Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go.
And you go, and I have a whole presentation on this, and people look at you and go, you're out of your mind. And then they go, well, maybe. So what happens if I'm helping someone start to get healthier? Saying, hey, here's the tokens you get for walking around your house. Here's the tokens you get for having a salad. Here's the and it turns out there's experiments going on around America where even with Medicaid populations or populations that are just trying to recover from strokes or helping and saying, we're not only going to just prescribe to you, we're going to help you modify your lifestyle and we're going to gamify it.
I love it.
And it works.
I love it. Yeah, we just jumped right in. And I really appreciate the passion that comes out of you. Can I call you David?
Oh, yeah. And I won't tell you what my wife calls me, so we'll stick with David.
But one of the things that I know about you, and I know my listeners and viewers don't, is really about you. And I would love just to take a snippet here to have you tell us a little bit about your background. You're from Arizona. You talked about your father having a place over here by the Sugar Bowl.
So I was actually born in an unwed mother's home in LA. A Holy Family unwed mother's home. So were my brother and sister. Adopted, moved out here, grew up here in the Phoenix Scottsdale area, Saguaro High School. I mean, it's home. Undergrad and grads. Yeah, Sabercats, yay. Undergrad, grad.
At ASU?
ASU.
Okay.
And I've been incredibly blessed.
You served in the state.
I was in the state legislature when I was 28 years old. I just did 2 terms. I got to be the majority whip in my second term. I actually got to chair the health committee in my freshman term because I was so smart and good looking. Had nothing to do with the fact they had indicted 10% of the legislature in as scam. It had nothing to do with that. And I was the only idiot still, standing there. And even then appropriations chairman was kind enough to let me specialize in the access budgets and those things. I also have another tweak. I was a part-time page in the state Senate in 1982 when they wrote access. A state senator named Bob Usdane, who represented—
I know Bob. I knew Bob.
Bob was my intellectual benefactor of, David, you're interested in this stuff, and I have budget. You're going to be my page. And I just ran around, got him chocolate and sat in meetings and took notes.
Wow.
But here I am all these decades later now running for governor and having the background, because when I left the legislature, I went back to the business, then got talked into, got the blessing to be the chairman of the Board of Equalization. So I ran the administrative tax court. Mm-hmm. Years later, I became the county treasurer. So I ran the finances of that part of the county, tax collector, investment officer, banker for 3,300 taxing districts.
Wow.
And then back to my business and got very lucky, my wife and I, and was lucky enough to get elected to Congress. So
in 2011.
2011.
Wow.
And I'm in a very, a tricky district. It's what they call political performance is almost 50-50. An incredibly well-educated district. I think I'm number 2 or number 3 for a Republican in the entire country. So, and it's very entrepreneurial.
Right.
I have one of the highest entrepreneur districts in America.
I'm in your district.
So it makes sense. But you go from Carefree Cave Creek all the way down to Van Buren in Phoenix, from the I-17 freeway all the way to Lascendis.
Wow.
In East Mesa.
You have a big swath of Maricopa County.
Oh, yeah. I basically the northern side. And it's wonderful. But it's sometimes just, there's also this joy of you show up in a room, you're going to do a meeting, and you realize half the room have PhDs. And sometimes it's both intimidating, but the quality of the discussion, the quality of trying to do problem solving is remarkable. And I think actually in many ways, many of these ideas I have of how to make Arizona better came from the very people I represent.
I love it. It's interesting. You were there at the beginning of Access. I think of Dr. Kirshner,
and I think who's still one of my buddies, is still going strong.
He's in his 90s, and I got to tell you, he presents like he's always presented. And then obviously, Joe Anderson and Dr. Schaller. I mean, Schaller Anderson was the very beginning of what Mercy Care ended up becoming. Yep. So, I mean, this state has some great roots with Access. We'll talk about Access a little bit more later, but
we do need we're at the inflection point where as things have moved off the waivers and those things, it's time for a relook at modernization. And part of the tough part here is we built a healthcare system on the design that we were going to keep growing. Arizona will grow, just much slower because the entire nation is going to grow much slower population-wise. Remember, we're at 0 population growth as a country.
Right.
And
we're actually negative, but
because
to sustain our population, every child reared female needs to have 2.1 kids.
In my math, and we'll see if the Census Bureau confirms it, is we're at 1.59.
1.59.
5859 is the debate.
Yeah.
So we're still better than some parts of the industrialized world, but France has more babies than we do as a country. We're not, many of our designs of our systems are not ready for the graying of America, the lack of new workers coming in to become a doctor, to become healthcare professionals. We've got to deal with the lack of population coming in, and then the technology transition. But I'll also give you, we don't spend enough time trying to figure out how we're going to plug in biology, synthetic biology, the cures. We can cure hemophilia today. Since sickle cell anemia, there's some statistical problems, but it's functioning. We have a cure. Go back 12 years ago, hepatitis C. We were going to do all these liver transplants. The next day, we had a cure.
We're making so much progress.
But you have to build these into the model and then make them accessible. And you would be amazed how perverse, absolutely perverse Washington, D.C. is, where you will get pushback on even access to GLP-1s because it changes your snacking habits. It changes what you eat. It changes, and it's
the special interest groups are not going to like that.
Well, look, Washington has become a protection racket.
Right.
And it's a protection racket of incumbent bureaucracies and business models. If Blockbuster Video had hired enough lobbyists, Washington, D.C. would have slowed down the internet and stopped Netflix. I use that as an example because it's easy to process.
That's a great metaphor for me to imagine. Absolutely.
And I will argue, look, can I give you the simplest example because this one is me.
Yeah.
I'm in many ways, I've been one of the leaders on telehealth. I showed up 15 years ago, and that was one of my passions. It was never, ever, ever, ever going to get a hearing. In this marketplace, in my political marketplace, they spent millions beating the ever-living crap out of me on television, on radio. David Schweikert's trying to get between you and your doctor-patient relationship. Who was running those ads to stop telehealth? It wasn't healthcare. It was real estate. The folks that bought the urgent care centers, the folks that bought the emergency rooms, that bought the emergency room practices, because telehealth means you can use your technology and not have to walk in the door. Now what happens, and the only reason you have telehealth today was COVID.
Right.
It was the only reason it got put into
It was only 20 to 30% adopted, and then 70 overnight with COVID.
And then now we still have the fights now in reimbursement as some folks are trying to dial it back. I would argue, because I've had this presentation in my office in Washington, D.C., it's now the telehealth platform. It's a lot like Doc AI and some of these others. It's an avatar. And it's reading the data off your body and looking at your sleep patterns and everything else. And you can almost have a morning consult every morning. And look, you're talking to technology. You're talking to a specialized stack AI. But that's what when I'm talking about the freedom is about to be handed to us if we can just embrace and get the technology lined up with our needs.
You know, I'm going to dial back just a few. You talked about gamification.
Mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing about technology and the gamification piece is it puts in place accountability.
Yes.
And that's what we're missing. We're missing the accountability. People aren't accountable for their actions, and they need to be. And if you're tracking a lot of this data and you gamify it, you become accountable. And you're accountable to, whether it be an AI agent or a virtual agent or a real person.
How many friends do we have that their personal trainer is now an AI program app on their phone?
A lot.
Yeah. And having one on my phone, it yells at me, lift more weights, but
get more sleep.
But remember the perversity of how much healthcare has become about money, not about health. And that passivity of folks actually taking care of themselves for a long time was a business model. Now all of a sudden we're starting to understand the economics and the morality of helping their brothers and sisters be healthier and giving them the path to do that. So look, I'm incredibly optimistic. Some of it, I don't believe will come from the federal government. I believe the federal government is so intellectually calcified, no matter what, the Secretary of HHS, Secretary Kennedy, and he and I talk about this all the time, trying to actually believe that the experiments are going to really happen at the state level. I can give you an example. If you have someone listening, go on right now and Google Utah AI prescription renewals. Utah has just done a sandbox allowing that you can get your prescription renewals using a little AI platform in the state of Utah.
Wow.
It's here.
Right.
Arizona belongs being on the cutting edge.
Absolutely. I mean, we have the technology here. I mean, the fact that the Taiwan semiconductor facilities being built here, 100,000 employees coming here.
Well, okay, the numbers will be, it's a little more complicated because, we still have our issues with our brothers and sisters, the Intel facilities. Hopefully that new fab will come back up. But parts of our economy in Arizona are pretty stagnant right now. Our wage growth and those things. So it's part of the intellectual vision of Arizona is how do we become the early adopters and the incubator of the next generation of business startups in healthcare technology. And that actually is one of the things that will be our growth engines.
I love it. I mean, look, we talked about Todd Laporte being here. We talked about Dr. Jim Whitfield, ASU, starting a medical school and partnering with Honor Health.
Yeah.
We're going to have doctors that are going to be grown here.
Yeah. I'm a bit more of a disruptor. We need the docs. We're desperate for them. We also need the doctors to work hand in hand with the technology.
Right. And they're talking about having an engineering and
yes, exactly.
medical
and big
degree.
fan of that.
Right.
But we were talking about that 10 years ago and we were persona non grata for the idea. Now it's finally matured to the point. Some of this we should have started years ago. And it's more than just what the services you and I receive, the running of a doc's office. We have legislation called Clean Claims. Here's the doctor's notes. Here's the insurance contract. They match. Pay it. None of this fighting back and forth and chasing claims and those. The fact of the matter is AI arbitration, all these things that where you can automate the waste in our society to make us better, faster, cheaper. And with that also comes a vision of that technology helps you raise wages. We have a genuine economic problem we have to be honest about, particularly in Maricopa County. We were such an epicenter of inflation that if you're a working person, most likely you are poorer today than you were 4 or 5 years ago, unless you're making today about 30% more. Remember the inflation cycle during the Biden years?
Exactly.
And wages have not grown like that. Matter of fact, we have entire categories right now where wages are falling. So there really is this unified theory of why I both love the healthcare technology, helping our brothers and sisters come back in the labor force, stay healthier, age in place, and also becoming the next generation of upstart industries in our community.
So I keep coming back to you because you're running for governor, and I love that. I mean, you're my congressman. I'm in your district. You're in your 17th year. And 16th year. And you're going to
it feels much longer, but
you're leaving Congress to lead our state.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share with me and our listeners why.
Look, I'm blessed. I chair the Joint Economic Committee. I'm number 4 in Ways and Means. I chair oversight. I'm the guy doing all the investigations in the organ procurement, the hospice issues, Medicare Part C, which is I have like 6 PhD economists, probably a half a dozen attorneys, 30-some staff.
Wow.
And the people I work with will not do what's necessary to save our future. As of yesterday, we were borrowing $87,000 a second. As of 3 days ago, we went over $39 trillion.
39 trillion.
Over the last 12 months, we're borrowing $7.7 billion a day. Most of that is interest and healthcare costs.
Wow.
I have offered legislation after legislation after legislation to modernize, adopt technology, fix the waste and fraud, do all of these things. But because it's complicated, because it's healthcare, because some have the word Medicare, I have found my Democrat colleagues are infuriating on these subjects because their attitude is, we're just going to tax rich people more. And then you show them the math that this mathematically cannot work. It doesn't get you anywhere close.
Doesn't.
But my Republicans also enrage me because of the fear of doing bold things to save. This isn't save the future. This is deal with the reality of the future. 6.5 years, Social Security Trust Fund is gone. 6.5 years, Medicare Trust Fund is gone. Just to fix those two things together, in that first year, they're both empty, which is 2033, $638 billion. The scale of these numbers is insane.
It is absolutely insane.
Why wouldn't you grab brothers and sisters from both sides of the aisle who own calculators? And maybe that's the problem, is very few around me want to do the math because math doesn't get you on television tonight. Saying something insane does.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't fit the narrative.
And that's why, look, I love the fact you're doing this with me because I find a long format like this, we can tell the truth, explain what the math, but also be optimistic that there are solutions.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the solutions are complex. And today's media and politicians only want to talk about things that are trite. They can say in 20, 30 seconds, shiny objects, and they don't solve problems.
You know, I love where you stand on healthcare. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we know the math, and we know that right now we are in dire straits. I mean, like you said, the Medicare, you know, it's going to run out of money. And what do we do? I mean, how do we fix this?
It's a combination of lots of fixes. Okay, we did a paper in my office in the last year, if you did the MRIs, the CTs, the ultrasounds, the x-rays, and added up how many duplicative scans were done in America, the total aggregate, we think it could be as high This isn't, and this is an insane number. It's $35 billion. Is it, we have a bottom and top. That's the top number. Okay. So what would be a simple solution that doesn't really cost anything? You get your knee x-rayed because you took a good tumble, or you get your knee MRI'd. Put the darn scan on this thing. And then when you go to your next specialist, you hit the button and there it's on the screen. The day we introduced this as a concept and piece of legislation, I already have the lobbyists lining up at my door who make money on those duplications, screaming at me, are doing everything they can to go to other places to block it. But that's only one example of dozens and dozens and dozens of these things, that the adoption of the innovation is the cure. I may not be able to accomplish that at the federal level because I'm one of 435, but I can accomplish that at the state level.
And like you said, you've got people blocking it.
Yep.
People don't want that.
It's all about the money.
It is about the money. And you want to take what you know and bring it here to the state. I mean, growth has stagnated. This state, and certainly Maricopa County, since 2019 has grown
remarkably.
It's amazing how many people have moved here.
A bit of trivia, and I hope I get my number right. 40% of our population in the city of Phoenix has been here, I think, less than 20 or 25 years.
40%.
40%. And you start to think about that. And I would argue in some ways that's wonderful, because you get people who chose to pick up their lives, move to a place that up until recently was more like a meritocracy. You got rewarded because your willingness to work hard. You had great ideas. You were willing to take a risk. It was sort of a rebirth of, you may not have liked your life in Iowa, but you're now going to rebuild it here. And I would think that's why our people are friendlier, more entrepreneurial, more risk-taking. And some of that, though, is flattened out. And there's all sorts of data points for this over the last 2-3 years here in Arizona. And we need to bring back that entrepreneurial spirit that you come here to rebuild your future. And by working hard and being smart about it, you get rewarded.
You know, what I'm hearing from you is coming to this position, being governor of this great state of Arizona, you can have an impact. An impact is what's motivating you, because you feel like you're stagnated in the federal level.
Well,
because
and
there's
I know I'm interrupting, but apparently there's a rule I'm not allowed to strangle the people I work with. And look, I just turned 64. My wife's my age. We've also adopted some kids.
Right.
I have a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old.
This is why you look so good. And she does as well.
Look,
keeps you young.
We're genetically, and we work hard. We eat well, but we have this running joke of we need our kids to do well because I don't want them returning home when my home is a nursing home. But that's both funny and actually shockingly true.
Agreed.
But you wouldn't go and be my age and adopt kids if you weren't optimistic about the future. But you got to fight for the future.
Yeah.
You got to fight for today.
Yeah.
And so often the clown show that is modern politics is, I need to do something to enrage you. Get the dopamine hitting, raise some money off that rage, and then go and lose the next election. And for those of us on the conservative side, look, I'm a conservative. But we've lost race after race after race. At some point, you would think those who are pro-free market, pro-freedom, economic growth being moral, would step up and say, it's time to get involved in politics again, instead of sit on their hands and just complain about things.
100%. So we're talking about healthcare. So you're governor, first day in. What's the one thing you would want to change about healthcare here?
Do you see, there's the problem. It's not one thing. You got to do an entire unified theory. I would move towards some of the sandboxes of being able to provide much more optionality. I also think the right to try, particularly for some of the longevity, for some of the things involved in, if you know you have a genetic condition, there may be certain stem cell or other types of therapy therapies that you cannot get access to right now because they don't meet the current definition of right to try. I want to fix those sorts of things. I believe in healthcare freedom. Over here on access, 28% of the state's population is on our Arizona healthcare cost containment system, our Medicaid system.
And I want to just repeat that number, 28%.
Last year it was 28.4. It's come down just a little bit, but our dual eligibles, which means poor seniors, is growing. I've been memorizing the budget, so I'm still working on that. And is there a revolution, just a new, better, faster way to do it? We've done a math experiment of if you took your morbidly obese population within that program and found a way to say, okay, we have these new glutide tablets that cost $149 a month retail. Can the system get it cheaper? And you gamify at the end of 24 months, going into the third year, we had this remarkable savings because our brothers and sisters were healthier. They weren't having diabetic crashes. They weren't ending up in the emergency room. What happens when the morality of helping our brothers and sisters be healthy is also great economics?
Oh, great.
And good for the system.
100%.
And those are the things you look for, constantly starting to say is, how do we move forward to make this better for every Arizonan? Because I'm going to save money over here and I'll have population come back into the labor force and participate in society again because we invested in them. And it turns out that investment is cheaper than what we do today.
100%. I mean, you think about the byproducts, right? We start making people accountable, right? We gamify it and all of a sudden people are healthier. We're going to have less knee replacements, less hip replacements.
Some of my orthos have actually shown me articles that saying if I can do this, it even affects their business. But the funniest story I heard is one of my orthopedics, who's one of my best friends, basically said, David, we calculate you're going to cut my business down by about 18 to 22%, but I'm going to make more money from people playing pickleball.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say pickleball.
It's a great article saying, look, you're going to have
more people playing pickleball now.
But and you start and some of this gets crazy, but it's not spending boatloads of money. Our current governor, all the solutions are really expensive. What happens when the pill bottle with the 99-cent cap that beeps at you? So you remember to take your calcium inhibitor or your statin so you don't stroke out. 99 cents. It does not, the creativity, the adoption of the technology to help people be healthier is not this multi-billion-dollar investment. Right. I'll give you one that enrages people, but it's an honest question. So EBT cards, which is modern food stamps on, functionally think of it like a debit card.
Right.
Is it moral to have a state that says you can go buy onion rings with it?
Or Diet Coke?
Let's stick with onion rings. Okay. Because I have an onion ring problem and I'm trying never to eat another one, but I love them. But my point is, what happens when the very thing we claim we're helping people, in the long run, we're doing horrible things to their health future?
There's definitely a problem with that.
Yeah, it's so you make someone mad who might be in the grocery retail side or the fast food side, but they have to also see the morality of helping a population that's come to those of us in the public and needs nutrition support. Maybe it should be nutrition.
I think so. No, I love having this conversation with you. And it's interesting. We've talked about access and you've helped bring this about back in 1982, which is really fascinating.
Well, I was more of an observer in 1982, but in 1991, I was actually one of the negotiators for Dispro Share at the White House. So, and it's fascinating. All these years later now, I chair the oversight of some of these programs, and now running for governor, if I'm blessed, I get to come back and administer them, and hopefully administer them with a vision that does good things.
This state was known for the fact that it was the first one that had managed care.
Innovation.
And it was innovation. And we are we'll use the word stagnated right now, and we're challenged over access. We're not getting the funding that we really need.
Okay, can I take you to let's do? See, I disagree on the funding, but I require a whiteboard to walk you through where I see the leakage.
TJ, you have a whiteboard?
I'm begging for them.
Okay. You laugh. I've actually done this.
He could probably do it upside down.
If you ever actually go on YouTube, I have all these videos of speeches I've done with all these charts. But if I came to you right now and said, we need to figure out where the waste and fraud is, do you hire an army of auditors or lawyers, or do you hire a data scientist?
The latter.
The data scientist.
Yeah.
That's actually how my team back in Washington has been finding the organ procurement fraud or the hospice fraud, those things. It's a data scientist. And so if I came to you and said, okay, we had the sober living home scam.
Oh, yeah.
Could be as high as 2.8 billion of fraud.
Wow.
And much of it, but the exploitation of Navajos and Native Americans that went on that. I spent some time up in the Navajo Nation. Some of the stories rip your heart out. Our uncle disappeared one day. We never found him again. We heard he died somewhere in Phoenix. So these are humans. These are our brothers and sisters. So these scams are more than just bleeding of our resources. These are lives. Turns out, if you wanted to find where we're being cheated, fix the data sets. There is a AI program out there that the company that does it, it's actually shockingly inexpensive, and said we would have found the sober living home in the first 20, 30 seconds, and it'd be a few $1,000s to plug it into the system.
Sure.
There is a future here. And much of this is much more than just in the healthcare systems. Using the technology to get, counties, school districts, cities, state, share assets. Does everyone need an earth mover? Does everyone need a paint striping truck? Why can't I have an app right here saying, I'm the city of this, I need a paint striping truck for 3 days, hit the button, and it's treated like a co-op. Let's go back to access.
Oh, I like that.
For anyone it's listening, go look up Civica RX. It's a co-op that stepped in that there was these generic drugs that were costing too darn much money. So the California Medicaid system, some private insurers, some hospitals all got together and said, we're just going to make our own.
Wow.
Civica RX, look it up. They make 3 types of generic insulin cheaper than the federal government subsidized price. There are all these types of solutions around us, and some that are going to come upon us that we have to be open enough to embrace and be willing. And look, some things are going to fail, but some things are going to work, and that becomes our innovation, our future.
Well, look, you and I agree on the one thing. The private sector is part of the opportunity to really grow from within. Innovation happens in classrooms. It happens in the workplace. People are looking to disrupt.
Okay. This seems to upset some people. So, okay, let's upset you. There used to be a term called creative destruction. The concept of today's business model is put out of business by the next creative disruption. All the hospitals that were building kidney transplant centers, the next day Sovaldi, the hep C cure, comes along, and that's a stranded asset. They're not needed. Those hospitals actually lobbied to slow down access to the hepatitis C drug so they could amortize their costs. You understand how perverse the money situations are.
Yes.
How do you build a society? Can Arizona be that incubator of saying, we embrace creative destruction, we're going to run fast, innovate like crazy, and make people's lives better? And you have to almost build that into a culture, but also a government ethos, because government now is used as a barrier to innovation to protect business models.
No, I'm 100% in agreement with you. We need that creative destruction. We need disruption. We do need to really think outside the box. For me, I've lived here for 32 years, and it really is amazing to see some of the things that have happened here. When I first moved here 32 years ago, there was a gentleman that you know fairly well. I won't mention his name here, but his wife needed cancer treatment. Had to go to U of A to go get cancer treatment down to Tucson. Now we have a half a dozen, if not more, places people can go to get cancer treatment.
My family's been through it. We had a little girl with leukemia, and even my many people know about the battles my wife had when we got married. But today, think of this: today, that very leukemia my little niece had is absolutely curable. Most blood cancers today, I think the stat I last saw was like 95% of blood cancers now are curable. We live in a time of miracles.
Yes.
Let's just keep them in. Let's just keep the innovation coming.
I mean, look, pancreatic cancer used to be a death sentence, and their treatments. I mean, right here at the Virginia Piper location at Honor Health. I mean, you got Dr. Dan Von Hoff.
And some of
the stuff he's doing is fascinating.
And some of the crazy trials.
Yeah.
Okay, can I take you to Crazy Town? Long as you and I.
Let's go Crazy Town.
You started this.
All right.
I want anyone who's watching, and I want to. It's technically not a vaccine, but the way you're going to Google it is fentanyl vaccine.
A fentanyl vaccine. It's kind of scary.
No, it's actually not.
All right, but I'm just saying.
No. I've been working on this for years now. What it is apparently it's a protein that attaches to the synthetic molecule and makes it so it can't pass the brain-blood barrier.
Whoa.
So we know that synthetic drugs rewire the brain almost instantly.
Yeah.
So if you've had this, it's one of the reasons people die. One of the reasons it's such a threat to first responders. But how many homeless people will die today in Maricopa County? Some days we have 3 homeless people die a day. And you fail rehab, and you fail rehab, and you fail rehab. What if this would actually give you a chance? Because it lasts for about a year as a path. And I'm arguing for the morality of a disruptive technology to help someone have enough time that their brain chemistry can at least come back somewhat to normal, so they can come back into society. Now, it has to be a choice,
right?
We're children of God. You has to be a choice. But it can be a choice saying, look, if you want us to provide you rehab services, would you consider doing this so we might have a success instead of massive recidivism rates? There are ideas like this, and I do entire presentations on these. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't work, but we're heading towards phase 3, and I'm trying to get them to do one of their test sites here in Sunny Slope. But this is how you provide optimism for the future. And you got to be willing to take risks to make people's lives better.
Yeah. Doing nothing is that definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Very true.
Yeah. We need to take those risks, and we need to be, creatively disrupting and doing different things.
So from everything, I know yours is, the podcast is Health Futures. The technology, the drugs, the systems, the ability to have, hey, I'm going to have Meals on Wheels show up at your door, but they're also going to drop off your oxygen tank. Maybe they could also deliver your pharmaceutical. The fact of the matter is, there's so many ways we can remove the waste and all the crap in the system, so I can age in place much more gracefully. My brothers and sisters who need us, how do I make it so they can come back in society where they don't need the government money to be healthy? How do you actually make it so if we're going to have a blue zone, we're actually attacking the things that shorten life? And we have all the way to some of the ideas we have to grow the economy of crowdsourcing environmental data and all these other things that make it so government can be dramatically smaller and yet much more effective.
You and I see the world the same way. I see.
So you're the other one.
Yeah, I am the other one, but I see a world where home has to be the center of care. We can do so much in the home, and that's where people want to be. It's the least costly place to be. We can bring diagnostic testing. We can bring doctors. We can bring nurses. We can do so much. And, you and I both know that you should only be going to the hospital if you need some life-saving administration and some type of life-saving treatment to keep you alive, because hospitals are places where bad things can happen. My grandmother had this great saying, grandparents have great sayings. So my grandmother, we called her Granny. Granny used to say that the doors going into hospitals are large and wide. The doors leading out are very small and narrow.
Yeah, that's both dark and probably technically accurate. But look, we're trying to promote something to my team because we've been doing the data on it. What happens if there's a little $9 piece of tape that actually has sensors on it that sees micro movements of your body temperature and knows if you have early sepsis? And we can hit you with an antibiotic almost immediately. We calculate that is in the billions and billions and billions and billions 100%. And billions and billions of dollars of savings. Just this little thing you put on, but because it's so sensitive. And part of that's actually made here in Arizona. So this is sort of back to, have you ever seen, there's a couple great papers out there. People wrote their PhDs on this. You get a hospital bill let's pretend, really pretend, it's $1,000. How much of that is actually healthcare? How much of it is the air conditioning? How much of it is the maintenance of the plumbing system? How much of it is the HR department? How much of it is the contributions to the hospital workers' pension? How much is the pavement in the parking lot? The reality of it is, because we have built structures, much of healthcare is actually real estate. And we often don't think about it that way, but if you take a step backwards and start to understand the efficiencies of, I want to be healthy, I want to have my illness dealt with, what is that? And was all this infrastructure required for it? And that actually, if we can rewire that in our brains, we can have sort of the cost revolution.
That visualization is awesome. I'm serious. I mean, all of those things are calculated into that bill that you get. And we haven't even begun to talk about the big bad wolf. And we're talking about the insurance companies who are an impediment to getting treatment in a lot of cases.
That's why I think actually my clean claims legislation, where, look, here's the insurance contract, here's the doctor's notes, they match, it's an auto pay. There's ways where the mitigation of risk, and look, the same way I feel about pharmaceuticals. I want my hospital system, if they want, go buy 3D printers and print your own. Join Civica RX. I want Pfizer to be able to sell directly to the consumer. I want the PBMs to go into the manufacturing business. I want everyone knifing each other, because that's what markets are.
Right. Free enterprise.
But government actually sort of created these silos in the way we reimburse, the way we regulate. So we complain about them a lot, and they laugh at us because saying, complain all you want. You government put me in this silo where I have to do it this way. Legalize competition. And you can do that even to insurance. Remember, healthcare. Okay, let's make this sort of one of the last statements and see if this makes sense.
Okay.
The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is a finance bill. It's not a healthcare bill. The Republican alternative, better actuarially, it's spread out, but was a finance bill. Medicare for All is a finance bill. The whole debate we had last year over subsidies on top of subsidies for people in ACA, that's financing. We've turned healthcare in America into financial engineering. In all those discussions, did you ever hear a discussion of, hey, 47% of our population healthcare expense is related to obesity. Maybe we should do things on obesity. Maybe we should help our brothers and sisters be able to know where they are genetically so they know what their triggers. Maybe a multi-cancer blood test we can do. How do you and I change this discussion? That it's not financial engineering of this insurance company is going to do this healthcare system is going to do this, we're going to build this type of, and it started to become health. And that's the basic premise. That is the most basic premise of my healthcare philosophy, is move away from it being a financing debate to a healthcare debate.
And we've been trying to really introduce value-based, right? It's been fee for service for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole concept behind value-based is having better outcomes and sharing in those savings.
But you got to make it so you can't do what happens in Medicare Part C and other things of, I have a value-based, but I get a risk score, so I get a bonus. I get a star rating, so I get a bonus. They actually, how about if it just becomes, I have a population that's healthier, that's how I get my. And the lobbying loves this as long as they can put in the externalities to bleed the system for more cash.
Mm-hmm. We talked about insurance companies, and you're approaching 65, and I'll be 64 this year. A lot of people.
Thank you for mentioning that.
You look really good. So I will just say this: a lot of our brothers and sisters out there are, not really understanding Medicare. Right? Medicare is really confusing,
and it doesn't need to be.
And then you got Medicare Advantage, and some people refer to it as Medicare Disadvantage. And a lot of problems with that is that people are being sold on things that they can't possibly deliver.
All right. I have a bit of an expertise on Medicare Part C, Medicare Advantage. Yep. I'm also the one running the big investigation into it.
Thank you.
I had the insurance company executives in front of me just about 3 weeks ago. Made the papers. You might have seen it. When I had one of the insurance companies, the biggest one, tell me that they wrote a check last year of $9 billion to AARP. That several billion dollars was paid to brokers. We actually have one of my data scientists who's made it very clear. We could take Medicare Advantage. You live in this zip code, type in your drug, type in your doctors, and here's the 2 plans that have that. The reality of it is information on the purchasing side is the holy grail. Not see someone on Joe Namath, late night telling me, call this phone number. And you find out that phone number is a broker.
Right.
Not a healthcare plan.
Absolutely.
It's a broker. They're selling your name to others.
And they make a lot of money.
Stunning. But the system is designed. They get to make it because we're the idiots that designed this.
But the government's funding it.
The government's funding it, so fix it. I have legislation that fixes it. Says our preliminary score for CBO was $1.840 billion in savings over 10 years on my Medicare Advantage fix bill.
Wow.
Can't get a single other member of Congress, Republican or Democrat, to co-sponsor it because you got to take on the insurance companies. I would argue the good insurance companies, the ones with really efficient networks and those things, would love my bill because they're going to make lots of money by helping our brothers and sisters be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
But they like this model right now where they get to score you as sicker and therefore get bonuses on you.
100%.
And you saw the Wall Street Journal articles, a year ago, of the woman in, I think it was Sun City, that had a disease. Except she'd never been tested for the disease. She'd never received a drug. She'd never visited a doctor on that disease. Someone just came to her door and just put it in, and the insurance company was getting like an extra $3,000 because she had that disease, except she doesn't have it. She was just scored that way. You got to remove those perverse incentives. And a classic, properly designed, managed care, we call it capitated model, lines up the incentives that they benefit if you benefit.
Makes so much sense.
And that's what the original access was. That was actually Dr. Frist in 2005's model for Medicare Part C, Medicare Advantage. We live in a time of miracles. The drugs that are coming, the therapies that are coming, the data that's coming, we can actually remove this stuff that's bleeding us to death and make it so the future actually works.
it's really interesting to hear you talk about this because I almost engaged with an MA plan a few years back to help. And as you know, I have caregivers
Mm-hmm.
to help their members get in to see primary care because they didn't know what they had because people were paying
Yep.
their premiums. I didn't know what those numbers were until they shared them because the amount of money that was available because they went and saw their primary care from the government was huge. It was lots of money and they were willing to share that with us. We never got it off the plan or got the program started, but to me, it just showed how much money was coming through these MA plans from the federal government.
And look, it's bigger. 55% of America now is on an MA plan. So now it's the dominance. It's all fixable. Just how do you find members of Congress that are willing to sit and read and have meeting after meeting after meeting and deal with it? And it's one of the reasons I'm leaving. I have people that sound great on Fox News tonight. They sound tough as nails. And then when it comes time to actually do real work, it's never going to happen.
Yep. They're nowhere to be found.
And I think the American people have caught on. The voters are much smarter than the political class. They're tired of the clown show. They're ready for some actual intellect in doing policy and making their lives better.
One last healthcare question. I would love to see, and I know that we've had a chance to talk to your chief of staff in your position now, but we certainly can impact it here in the state. I would love to see the state of Arizona be like La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I bring up La Crosse, Wisconsin because 98% of the residents in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which has a population of about 100-some-odd-thousand people, have advanced directives.
Yeah.
And we should make sure that every single person that is getting, whether it be Medicaid or Medicare, they at least put forth their advanced directives because you and I both know that the amount of Medicare dollars that are being used in the last year of someone's life, and the number is like 5 or 10% of the Medicare population, is like 50% of the Medicare dollars.
Look, you always have to be careful how these things are designed. And back in the early 90s, Arizona actually adopted. We used the term living will, which was a little more palatable from the polling.
And we did it through the Secretary of State, I think.
Yeah, well, no, that's where you register or could get the document.
Yep.
And doctors particularly are supposed to ask you, do you have one? Do you want one? Those things. Sure. It's important. The math is actually more complicated, though, because there used to be the folklore of most of the money is spent in the last couple of weeks of someone's life for that person. It turns out if you do it on the aggregate, the person who has diabetes, the person who has a chronic condition, those things, even though that might be 5% of the population, they use almost 50% of all the spending. So yes, make sure end of life is as elegant and fair and respectful as you go. You got to respect. Life is an amazing thing, but the business model of healthcare is almost based on the chronic conditions because they're the repeat customers.
Right.
That's where my spending is.
And just to think what a gift it would be giving your family member by letting them know exactly what your wishes are. That's all we're asking people to do.
And in today's world, when you can actually just do it on an app,
right?
That's legally binding. Look, there are solutions here. We just got to make them part of society.
Well, I wanted our audience to learn a little bit more about you on the personal side.
All right.
So I'm going to hit you up with some rapid fire questions. And just so everyone knows, I have not shared that with you in advance. So
we're just
going to go right away.
Screw up.
Okay. So 3 words that describe Arizona.
Optimistic, meritocracy. And I know that's just 2, but actually that's where I would go. Look, the state is stunning.
It's a beautiful state. One word that defines leadership.
For myself, I'm going to say risk-taking.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning hike or late night reading?
Yes.
To both.
No, yes. No. Yeah, look, I'm a avid hiker. I wish I had more time, and I almost can't go to sleep without reading.
There you go. I love it. Favorite place in Arizona to recharge?
Oh, I love the Grand Canyon. Last year was my 40th camping trip in the Grand Canyon. Every year when I'm not in an election, and when I'm not in an election cycle, there's a group of us who've been friends for 40 years. And we gather people up. We're really good at it. We get a camping permit. We don't just go down and come. We camp. Sometimes we'll camp out for 2 days. The Grand Canyon in many ways is, where I go to realize just the power of God. It is just remarkable.
Love it. One book that shaped your thinking?
Oh, there's so many. Look, we all, grow up and like I had a household where, you had to do a Bible passage every week. That was just childhood. And in many ways, I find now I do that to my kids. When I was 14 years old, I read one summer from the beginning to the end, Atlas Shrugged.
Wow.
And it's a long book. That actually got me started thinking about the morality of the individual. There's just a lot of books that have impact on me, but I'm a fairly voracious reader.
Okay. Biggest challenge facing Arizona, just in one word?
Demographics.
If not politics, what career would you have pursued?
Managing money. If I could go back to my days in college, I wish I had continued. I originally sort of had a great interest in being a quant. You know what they pay actuaries?
I have no idea.
They really well, and they don't work that hard.
And now they probably use a lot of the technology.
Yeah, but it's the stamp. It's if you've been able to pass this test.
Right.
Some of my happiest times were managing portfolios, investment partnerships, those things, and the chaos of, we're going to buy real estate, or we're going to rehab this, or we're going to buy. I like that because, in many ways, I'm more comfortable with a calculator than a lot of other things in life.
Learning about you, I am not surprised. I am not So one thing that most people misunderstand about government.
It's all about the money.
Finish this sentence. The future of healthcare in Arizona depends on
innovation.
I agree with you 100%. Well, Congressman David Schweikert, I really, really appreciate you coming here into my studio and really spending the time with me talking about.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So, real quick for our listeners and our viewers, how do they reach out to you? And
we actually have a website like everyone else, davidschweikert.com. And on there, you can do everything from ask for a yard sign and we'll come put it up, to reach out if you have an idea of something I can do better. Look, many of the ideas that we talked about here, I'd love to say they're all original Schweikert ideas. They're not. You get them from conversations from the people around you, people it's their specialty, and then you refine it saying, here's a way we can do it. Just call my office, go to the website, send me ideas.
The thing I love about you is, well, you weren't born here; you were raised here.
Oh,
you're in Arizona.
I'm in Arizona,
and you love this great state. And I get why you want to leave Washington and really make, and I used this word before, an impact. And you feel like you can do that here in the state of Arizona?
Oh, you can. And the number of opportunities, the ability to get our state legislature, our governor, to start to build a common vision of how we're going to make things better instead of this insane snipping and fighting that they do today, because that doesn't make anyone's life.
Well, we're not getting anything done. I can tell you that for sure with this governor present.
Yeah.
And
so it's time, and sometimes it's time for the intellectual revolution.
Oh,
let's go do it.
Let's go do it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm Bob Roth, reminding you that living well isn't just about years, it's about the quality of life and connections. Follow and share the show, and join us next time for more on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life.